right, 3, 2, 1.
This Sunday on Meet the Press.
It's the country's longest-running show on television, and this week, Meet the Press is celebrating its 70th year on TV. For 7 decades, the show's been making headlines across the political world, including perhaps one of the most infamous lines in politics over the last 12 months.
You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute, alternative facts?
So today, I'm talking with the moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck-Todd from NBC.
Look, I'm going to do a little fun story here about Joe Toohey and try to embarrass him.
Oh, God.
So he knows where I'm going here.
And I should mention, before I worked here, I was a producer at Meet the Press and worked with Chuck for a few years. So I'm going to talk with him about that moment with Kellyanne Conway, this week's big elections, and whether or not they actually are a referendum on President Trump or just something the media likes to talk about.
If you didn't like the nasty back and forth that have been taking place the last 4 weeks in this Virginia governor's race, for instance, you better start taking some Tums now.
I'm Joe Toohey, and this is Politics Unusual.
From New York City, USA, welcome to the Fox 5 Podcast Network.
All right, and joining me now is Mr. Chuck-Todd, the moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, who just celebrated this week their 70th anniversary. And full disclosure, he is our former boss. I was there for 5 years before this job. So, Chuck, thanks for joining us.
Joe, it's a pleasure. It's my understanding that you said the topic you wanted to discuss, I believe, I just need to quote this correctly, was you wanted to discuss what it's like the 70 years of Meet the Press and the production decline that has taken place since you left. Is that correct? Is that what you wanted
I'm glad they should. Yeah, well, I want to talk about the brain drain of Meet the Press. It seems like very specifically about the day after I left it started. And I just wonder if you want to comment on that.
Look, I'm going to do a little fun story here about Joe Toohey and try to embarrass him.
Oh, God.
So he knows where I'm going here. So I would say, the very first face-to-face that I had with Donald Trump, my man in the field, my producer was...
That was me. Iowa Airport, Des Moines.
We were at the Iowa Airport, and we can go through... There were so many things revealing about that moment with the president.
Oh, yeah.
From trying to talk him out of wearing a hat, the Make America Great hat, indoors.
Right.
He was very concerned about his hair. We had a hair conversation where he said that he was a big Propecia taker.
Big supporter. I remember that.
Okay. But the other part that I've not shared very often is the fact that he was obsessed with you, Joe. And I think we twice he met you, and both times he was just like, "You're so good looking. You should be on television."
You know your ratings are going to go through the roof, right? Who's the handsome guy?
Here's the thing.
He's your producer or something?
Does he? A lot of people think he should be on TV. He should be here. Not here.
He should be on the other side of the camera.
All right.
What's your ratings?
Let me.
It was.
And I wish I were making this. By the way, I'm not making this up, right, Joe?
I have the video of it. I saved it. I tell people, if you ever question the president's judgment, I mean, he called me handsome once in front of Chuck, so he has to. There's something there.
He was taken with you, Mr. Toohey. So hopefully this gets you an interview at some point up there with the president.
I'm working on it
when he's hanging out at Trump Tower or something.
That was definitely one of the more jarring producer experiences I ever had. Was that interview.
That was something else. God, we had a fire alarm go off. Everything that could have potentially gone wrong with that interview did.
It was supposed to be on Trump Force One. Remember, it was supposed to be on the jet, but they changed right before. We did it in the lobby of the private FBO there. That was quite the interview to produce. Anyways,
pretty much the Trump presidency. It's always by the seat of your pants.
Right, you'll take what you can get. Yeah. So. Meet the Press, 70 years. John F. Kennedy famously called it the 51st state. That being the case, you're now the governor of that state. Give us a state of the state. Where's Meet the Press at 70? Where's it going? How's it changed? And where are you guys at?
Well, look, I think I had somebody ask me this question. Would Lawrence Spivak recognize the show if he were alive today? Huh. And my immediate answer was, boy, I hope so. And then another one was, would Tim Russert? And I said, same thing. Mm-hmm. Would he recognize the need for a daily show? Would he recognize? And I'm sitting here going, hey man, when Tim Russert took over the show in 1992, you could tell he was looking for ways to revitalize the Sunday morning format, revitalize Meet the Press, and he did it. He elevated the importance of it again. He expanded it to an hour. He made the political roundtable at the time. That wasn't a normal thing that it had been done. But it was at an important moment. If you think about 1992, that's basically the beginning of what we now refer to as the 24/7 news cycle. We had this cable channel, CNN, that constantly reported political news every day, So he sort of met that moment. When I took over, and you know this well, Joe, I shared it with everybody, my big, concern at the moment was, okay. And John Reese actually, I didn't realize he did this. He saved all the clips, right? When I took over Meet the Press, there were a lot of media thumbsucker stories about, okay, is the Sunday show format even worthwhile anymore?
Right.
Do we even need it? Right. And here we are 3 years. And look, I was mindful of that. And so I did want Meet the Press to be thought of as more than just Sunday morning. And so, yes, we now have a daily show and we've got a podcast, and I'm trying to get us into the documentary film business. We're doing a film festival, this month, our very first one. And it's outside entries that we're featuring, but I'm hoping to get into the game here ourselves and get involved in this. And so on that score, I feel good. And then something else has happened in the last 3 years. That actually I think has revitalized the whole genre. Look, our numbers are good, but
across the board, right?
There are 4 other Sunday shows. We pretend that they don't exist, right? But there are, and we're all doing well. Right. And there is a sense that I think the saturation of political coverage, whether it's on social media, cable news, the noise of it all, the polarized nature of how people consume it, there has been this, I think people now look at Sunday morning as, oh God, what the hell just happened? What does it mean? And why? And why does it matter?
Right, like a moment of levity or kind of processing, right?
Right, you got to process it all, which has always been the strength of Sunday morning. And here we are in a moment where that is suddenly people crave that now more than ever. So we've tried to up the relevance of our brand on Monday through Saturday, and at the same time, Sunday itself got elevated because of the saturation.
Right, and it's interesting. Your anniversary coincides with President Trump's 1-year anniversary of him being elected. And talking about the show changing, specifically in this year since then of the the reality of a Donald Trump presidency, is the show changed just because of Trump? Has it changed how you prepare? Has it changed how interviews are booked, how you research? I mean, I imagine it has.
I was just going to say, this is the stuff that you wouldn't write. Believe it, you've been gone now, I want to say a year and a half?
Year and a half, February 2016.
Okay, yeah, February, okay.
New Hampshire primary.
I know, it moved fast.
Right.
This time. You know what we fight now almost all the time? God help us if we ever air an interview that we tape on a Thursday or Friday. And if I said we really can't do interviews anymore on Thursday and Friday, you would be like, my God, didn't we do half the interviews?
Right, that was bread and butter.
In your 5-year tenure, right?
Right.
Were probably conducted Thursday and Friday. Well, the point was you could get away with it. They would hold for the most part, right? They'd be relevant.
Totally.
The handful of times in the Trump era where we've done something because you want it face to face, right? And the reason you pre-tape, look, none of us ever want to do an interview on tape. You always want it to be live,
right?
But to take you behind the scenes a little bit, I will. Sometimes you trade live for in person, right? And somebody, maybe they want to go home for the weekend. If they're a lawmaker, maybe they're going to be on a trip in Asia,
right?
Hint, hint, Mr. President. But and so you will do something on tape a couple days in advance. That stuff, Joe, I mean,
you can't do it anymore.
We just say no more often. You can't do it. We'll take satellite. As you can see, we do a lot more live than ever before, because the president is constantly churning the news. And at the end of the day, we can't be out of date, right? You can't have the Sunday show feel out of touch. And, it is that balance of not wanting to be overreactive to his tweet of the moment, but at the same time, if it matters, you've got to have the ability to acknowledge it, pivot, and move.
Right, and I was going to explain that. Essentially, the reason why, for those listening, is you have an interview, something big happens on a Saturday, like a Charlottesville or a tweet storm, and then it completely invalidates everything you talked about to the person.
I had to cut a deal. I cut a deal with Paul Ryan. It was so funny. The last time we did Paul Ryan, and he always insists on a tape, as you know, right? He always goes home on weekends. He just does, and he doesn't like to do satellite for the Sunday shows. So we did it, and I said, will you at least be available to be on the record in some form for us up until 8 a.m. Sunday morning if there's something major that happens that will make our thing look out of date. And there was one thing, and we did. Hey, we reached out to Speaker Ryan, and he told us X, Y, and Z, some reaction to something the president tweeted that day that probably felt important in the moment, or I think it made something that we had in the interview seem out of date.
Right.
And then he himself goes, boy, I guess you guys don't want these pre-tapes anymore, do you? And I said, no. Speaker.
Probably,
we really
probably
don't.
A sad reality for them too, right? Yeah. One of the biggest moments, maybe in politics this year, I'm sure maybe you'd agree with this, is alternative facts, and that happened on Meet the Press. Kellyanne Conway. At the time,
tone.
What's that?
Yeah, it's become symbolic.
Right, exactly.
Symbolic a bit.
Did you know that at the time? I mean, in the interview, you called her out there, but I mean, did you realize like, oh wow, that's a phrase?
So don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts?
The minute she said it, obviously, because when I heard it, I reacted quickly.
Right.
I knew it was going to be a moment, but with Trump moments, those moments are fleeting, right? So you don't know how impactful is it, right? Look, it turned out to be a bit more impactful. I think the Trump people are more careful about who they try to put out on Sunday shows. They don't put spinners out anymore.
Right.
Alternative facts, 4 of the 5 facts he uttered. The one thing he got right was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
They're careful where they put her. I'll be honest, it's made me pickier about who we accept. We're not going to take a spinner, and I think that all the other Sunday shows sort of operated that way. You don't see her on Sunday shows. You don't see any, and it's not just her. You don't see Sarah Huckabee that often.
Right.
I certainly don't. It's like give me the people that are making policy, not the ones that are spinning. Right. Like for Sunday morning, that's always been a thing, and I think that it in some ways it sort of left a mark on that front. But it's set. I was fired up about it for that. I remember being very fired up that Saturday when they did that because of the symbolic nature of it. Right. I couldn't believe they would make their first moment behind that podium to be trying to mislead. And it was just, What are you doing? You're sending a signal. And, I believed that they'd never recover as far as a credibility gap with a good chunk of the country because of that moment. And I think they are still struggling with,
you have to question,
plenty of meetings. They fully acknowledge that they don't have the same level of credibility that they wish they did. And I think it began with that moment.
Do you think the country's angrier now than they were in the past? Do you think that's a product of Trump or just the hyper fractured politics we have today?
I think Trump's a symbol of it. I think, look, my concern is that there's definitely was an anger driving the right a bit, and there was some anger in the Bernie and the Bernie crew during the Democratic primary. There was some anger that was driving that.
And now again,
what I've noticed is that I do think there are more on the left that believe the best way to respond now is to use similar tactics as the right, and with some of this Breitbart right, not the Chamber of Commerce, sort of mainstream conservative right. But what I'm referring to here is more of the populist right, the Breitbarts and things like that, and Rush, who have been stoking this anger for 25 years.
Right.
I think it's not an accident that basically the rise of, and if you look at the heart and soul of Trump's base is baby boomer white men. All right. They're probably the best symbolic, the baby boomer white men. So basically 55 to 75 at this moment. And think about when Rush Limbaugh started. Those baby boomer white men were just coming into the workforce or just maturing in the workforce at the time. That was 25 years ago. So then they were 30 to 50. And then you had the rise of Bill O'Reilly and Fox News, which was always stoking this sort of grievance. aspect. And I think 25 years of stoking grievance over time accumulates